sessions going on. How's everyone today? Thought I wanted to kind of do a overview of how we're kind of tackling the indie MMO. And so, obviously, as we all know, MMOs are extremely hard to and difficult to make. And so, I wanted to kind of break down how we're strategically making Ruins of Tearyn. And so, I think server, anything multiplayer is obviously a big topic of discussion for game development. And I think there's a lot of technology that is kind of done today that can really help you reduce scope and actually make an indie MMO. Because I think that topic is going to be coming up a lot more over the next couple of years. It's already kind of a term that I would say sort of started coming up more in 2020, maybe a little bit after 2020. It was a little bit more present. Before that, it was kind of like the Ashes of the Creation, the Pantheons, like they were kind of indie MMO, but they still had $1 million budgets. So it's a little bit a different category. It's kind of like that maybe AAA or single A category of dev companies. And so I think we're entering an era where there is enough existing technology to actually achieve making it an indie MMO. Doesn't mean it's going to be easy, but there are things out there that can really help you along the way. And so I'll just start getting into it now. And so I'm going to recap on what we're building, and then who we are and why we can do this, and then a little bit into what type of technology we're using currently to achieve this. And I'll go into also do a demo of how it's currently implemented. And as a big shout out, we are doing a playtest that ends tomorrow. So if you do want to play, you can join our Discord and reach out to us. Which reminds me, let me put the Discord in chat. And so happy to have anyone that wants to play over this weekend join in. So the first things first is we're building a small-scale indie PvE MMO inspired by the classic era of MMOs. This is kind of going back to like the EverQuest, the Ultima Onlines, and World of Warcraft vanilla, or the old, as it launched type thing. And so that's the era that inspires us the most. We weren't entirely huge RuneScape players, but we're seeing a lot of kind of resurgence in that game, and kind of taking a look at, what are things that also apply to RuneScape that also apply to EverQuest and stuff. A key thing is that we're building something that, like we like to say, that it's EverQuest and World of Warcraft had a baby. And so we're not making EverQuest Plus, we're not making Classic Plus, we're making something in the middle that's unique, that's ours. And so we want something, like there's a lot of things we loved about EverQuest and WoW, but there's also a lot of things that we hated that we want to see change. And so on that front, our pre-production has been about 10 months, but the key thing here is that we're not even working part-time hours on this. We're not published. We don't have a funding backing on this. And so we're chipping away at it as we can. And so we started development in November of 2024. And that was actually largely getting some of our base systems in and working on our announcement trailer. Because I'll get into Vertical Third, which is what we also built previously. And so it was more of doing some base class designs and some world building to just get us pushed into a direction to get going. In March, we were actually on the Unreal Engine live stream with the Ruins of Tearyn itself, a 2-hour overview of what we're doing with everything. So if you want a deep dive on other parts of what we're doing, we did a whole online playtest for that as well. And so we got to break down everything there as well. But this is more, broad overview of things. And we're trying to do a playtest every quarter. So we did a playtest in April, which is our first one, a playtest in June, which was mostly our save and load update. So you can actually, previously, if you got loot, experience, you got disconnected, you'd be reset to nothing. And so in June, we did our first variation of save load. So now your location in the world's saved, your loot's saved, and your experience and level is saved. And like your class, and then like your character selection stuff is all saved as well. And so, and then this playtest this weekend, September, has been a large focus on a couple of our game mechanics. We're trying to change how player skill is kind of associated with, and it removes the, it's trying to go away from being like skill is button mashing your rotation. We don't want that as a skill factor. We want it to be about your positioning, environment awareness, and overall gameplay of how you're doing things. And so, but this talk isn't so much about the game design right now. It's going to be focused on the tech. And so you can attend our live streams or look at the Unreal Engine live stream for a little bit more on the game direction, game design stuff. And our focus is on our marketing stuff has been, there's a lot of criticism for MMOs these days, especially in development ones or indie ones. The whole Kickstarter scene for indie MMOs is a very bad place. So we're not trying to overstate what we're doing. We're trying to prove what we can do through actual real gameplay. And so instead of saying, oh, we'll have this or we'll have that, it'll be amazing, it's here's what we have. Come play, come test it, see what you like. And so it's actually built gameplay that you can experience yourself. And so who we are, we're 10-year Unreal Engine veterans. We worked for Epic Games. We're creators of Vertical Third. It's a full game architecture with designer tools that are all multiplayer ready. We got $100,000 for that. Got referrals from Tim Sweeney for that. We're Unreal authorized trainers. We did a major education project for Epic Games himself, which was the Epic Games Game Design Professional Certificate on Coursera. And we did courses 5 through 8 for that. And there's like over 26 hours. I think there's over 25,000 students enrolled in the course as a whole, and it's gotten pretty big. We spoke at GC on behalf of Epic Games, and then we've been on the live stream 3 times. And Vertical Third actually has an online playable tech demo on the Epic Games Store as well. You can download it for free and just log in and test it. And now the caveat on that is it's a tech product. It's not an art product. The idea is that you incorporate your art into tech. And so into the tech. So it's very techie oriented. And so the next stage is, again, we've been on the live stream 3 times, one for Vertical Third, one for Tearyn, and then also for building and sustaining communities on for games. And in our case, tech too. We also have, we're starting to get into more multiplayer-based content on Vertical Third, the Vertical Third YouTube channel. So if you're ever interested in checking that out, we're there as well. And this goes back into what Ruins of Tearyn is for us. It's not just a passion project to make a game for ourselves. We've also, if you didn't know, Christen and I both met on World of Warcraft. So we love MMOs, but a lot of the MMOs today, they just don't really fit our play style. So it's a passion project for us, but at the same time, Ruins of Tearyn as an indie MMO, it's going to improve Vertical Third. So it's just like Unreal. Epic Games has their relationship with Fortnite and Unreal Engine. We want the same relationship with Ruins of Tearyn and Vertical Third. And so the more we put effort into Ruins of Tearyn, and we have all those optimization techniques, the multiplayer and replication techniques, the server flow, the workflow of maintaining an indie MMO, all those things that we learn from that, we're going to pull back into Vertical Third and make Vertical Third a better product. And so, the common phrase is like eat your own dog food type thing. And so we're using our own product to build an indie MMO. Indie MMOs and MMOs in general are, massive undertakings. They require a lot of different things, a lot of optimizations and a lot of systems to work together coherently. And they have a constant need for new content. And so we're trying to make sure that the workflow and all those things are brought back into Vertical Third to be able to make other developers make games faster and on a lower budget. And so there's three main problems that we kind of see in making an MMO. And so the big one, obviously, is that, and like obviously this is a tech talk, so we'll be focusing on the second one. But the first one is that the genre as a whole has lost their social gameplay identity. You know, if you think about an MMO, the whole experience and identity should be you're playing, or at the very least interacting with a lot of other people, and a lot of other players. That is the identity of an MMO. And so that's kind of lost, back in the classic era, in the 1999 to 2004 era, there wasn't social media. So it kind of like inherently was a place to log in and meet other people. Whereas in today's day, there are massive amounts of social media, massive amounts of ways to connect with other people online. And so because of that, it's really lost its identity. And so when you find a game that you actually find other people to play with and socialize with and interact with, it feels different. It feels right, versus the current trend of, queuing up for something and then you don't even say anything to anyone and you mass pull AoE everything. There's no communication and you just kind of like do whatever. And so we're trying to figure out systems that prevent that from happening and actually make people want to go out and play with other people and communicate. I look at a lot of different topics of design discussion on that front, and that's where like you look at the board games and card games. A lot of times the games themselves might be a little bit basic, but it's because you're interacting with the other players around you that make the game fun and interesting and rememberable. And so trying to bring that aspect into it as well. Constantly trying to create new technology. That's probably the number one MMO killer, is trying to create new technology. And so obviously as an indie dev, we can't do that. And if you're an indie dev trying to do an MMO, you should definitely not try to do that either. And so the MMOs that have the money to do that and have the resources to do that, they can go and shoot their shot and try and do something new with that. And you have Ashes Creations with their mesh framework, their node systems, all these different things. You have Stars Reach with their voxel-based world that's being modified like crazy. You have plenty of games that are trying to do these massive worlds, massive infrastructures of things. And so, but all those things take a ton of cash flow to do. So that's the number one thing that we're trying to reduce with what we do. And so we're not trying to create new technology, we're using existing technology. And the last thing is MMOs in general are trying to always become WoW killers. They're trying to become the biggest thing on the planet as far as the game goes, and you don't have to. If you plan your team size appropriately, cater your MMO to a niche category of players, you can serve that niche and be very successful. And I know in some of the more Asia countries, there's like probably tons of smaller MMOs that are sustainable, I should say, that probably people have never even heard of. And so the topic of this talk is to constantly to talk about this problem of constantly trying to create new technology. And let's not do that. Let's use what already exists, reduce our scope, reduce our tech stack, and just use what we have available to us. And so there are some obvious answers here, and the first one is your game engine. And so that goes along with whatever game engine you want to use. Obviously, some are better for others. I strongly suggest Unreal Engine just because the built-in multiplayer capabilities is really good. And so that's very, very useful for that aspect. The game engine is going to handle your base core functionality of everything you do. You don't want to have to build your own game engine, especially building an indie MMO. That is kind of indie MMO in general is like a massive undertaking. Do not try and build your own game engine. And so use what's out there, use what you prefer. I strongly suggest Unreal Engine. From there, and this is where we get into the topic of the future of workflows, the future of the next big technology leap in game development. We believe it's game architectures. And that's what we made with Vertical Third. We built it back from we built it in 2019 and launched it in 2022. And so it was about 3 years of core development for that. And that's what we got 2 MegaGrants for. This handles your combat, your quests, your crafting, spawners, user interface, loot and equipment, AI enemies, localization, multiplayer, replication stuff, replication workflows, designer tools, statistics. Like we've already created all of this in that 3-year period. And since 2022, we've done some updates as well. And there's times where I just recently did an update where I did not like the flow of communication for its user interface, so I refactored that. And there's other things like that. But so the idea of game architecture and how you're building your game, how it's communicating with each other systems, all those things is something we've been thinking about for 7+ years at this point. And so when you're building an MMO, the project is massive, and it can get chaotic when you look inside in your projects. And like, there's a reason why games don't release their source files, right? Like they don't just release like, oh, this game's done, it's not making money more, it's completed, let's just give out the game project file. Like that doesn't happen, right? Because it's just this giant mess of things are duct taped together, and it can look kind of poorly on the people who built it, and sometimes. And so, but that's just the nature of game development. We don't have enough time to build things properly, and so we are forced to just ship it and get things ready, get things working, and ship it. It doesn't matter how it looks on the inside, just ship it. And so that's one of the biggest problems we're trying to solve with Vertical Third is a consistently improved and worked on game architecture to solve that problem of like tons of edge cases or things not working and not working in together and things like that. So that's what we're using for Ruins of Tearyn. It's Vertical Third. Tons of systems already built, and it's going to save us a massive amount of time. Next thing is your backend solution. This is obviously for indies. It's pretty much going to be down to PlayFab and GameLift. There's others out there. There's a lot of startups that have sort of come up in the last, I would say 2 or 3 years on this topic. And, it's one of those things where, PlayFab and before GameLift was, I can't remember what GameLift was before, but PlayFab was a startup themselves. And I think they started around 2016, something like that. Then just got acquired by Microsoft. And so they were the two, GameSparks. Amazon was GameSparks before, or GameLift was. And so the two giant companies took their bets, acquired companies, and have formed into these easily scalable services. And so for us, it's dedicated servers is the main one for us. And then right now we're using some basic functionality for databases to store, everything you do from your inventory, your experience, your level, your character selection, all those things. And so it's basically databases. And so, yeah, again, we use PlayFab. And so we're not building any of these services ourselves. We're not building a scalable instance-based dedicated server framework. It's all done through PlayFab. And kind of going in line with that is Epic Online Services. This might be my next focus for the next online playtest because it's the last kind of technology I haven't not implemented just yet. But again, anti-cheat, potentially voice over IP, leaderboards, achievements. Some of these things do have crossover with PlayFab and GameLift, but for us, it's largely some of these core functionalities here. And lastly, distribution. In the old school days, you'd have a patcher and launcher that you'd have to build yourself, and people would open the patcher and launcher, it'd patch and stuff for you. But that can kind of be a mess in itself. And so why not just use Epic Game Store or Steam? You know, like there's no reason not to use what's available to you already. Yes, there's a fee for it, but it's worth the reduced nightmare and reduced engineering workload. And so for us, Epic Games, obviously we have close ties with them, and it just makes perfect sense for us to use Epic Game Store. They have so many indie programs, and their overall fee is dramatically less. And so that's the kind of overall of use existing technology you have. Obviously, for us, it's vertical third, which is also something you can purchase on Fab for $20 to get started. So it is available to everyone. But that could just mean whatever products you find that work for you on the marketplace as well, or building it yourself. But obviously, that adds a lot of time, to get going with it too. But the whole marketplace as a whole could be your game architecture and just, figuring out what works for you. A mixture of marketplace and building your own stuff is what your game architecture is going to be. And so you can this is very simplified because it's not exactly true, but, game engine, game architecture is your front end, and then your online services and PlayFab and whatever is your back end. Not entirely true because, your game engine is also going to produce your dedicated server and whatnot. So, but it's just like a loose mental model to have going for yourself. And so how does this look in execution? And this is where I'm going to take you through a demo of what we have on our current playtest. And so right now we're using the in-development features for launching a game on the Epic Game Store. And so we're in dev mode here with Ruins of Tearyn. And I can launch this up and start showing what you do. And so, again, this kind of facilitates the Epic Game Store. That was my launcher. I can push updates to the client build, and if the person loaded up their launcher, it would patch their software for them. So, and patch the game for them. So, don't have to build a patch your launcher at all, and we're good to go. And next one is client login, and so that's where we're at here. And I can simply log in. Right now, we're just using some pretty basic, PlayFab logins or whatever. Really easy to set up and get going. But that's very basic stuff. Just get your client up and loading. And from here, I logged in, and we're now connected to our character creation server. And so this is our dedicated server running in the cloud. And if we switch over to PlayFab here, you can see that it should show up in a second here. Something that's a little delayed. But our character select server is going to get deployed here and show is deployed momentarily. Sometimes it takes a while to update, but it's deployed. But in the other aspects of things, on the character select server, the great thing about having a dedicated server for your character select is that you don't need anything to be replicated. And so that client is connected to a dedicated Unreal Engine server. There's nothing's being replicated to other clients, so you can have potentially 100 people all connected to that same character select server. It's not going to have performance issues because it's not replicating anything. And so, but you are able to have that client as dedicated server interaction just in case. And like, this is just normal networking workflow, but never trusting the client. So anything you do as a player is being sent to a dedicated server. The dedicated server authenticates what the player is asking and then pushes it to the cloud for their request, whether it's like a character, maybe it's a name check on the character name. Maybe it's certain options for a class race combo, anything like that. And it's also instant and scalable. So, so there finally it came up. So the character select server is active and online. And so this is one of those things where the actual, say you have millions of people logging in, you could have, hundreds of these servers up and going if you ever find a performance issue impacting that. But I highly doubt you actually need any of that, to be honest. But at some point, there's going to be a cap, and at that point, you just start another server instance, direct people to that one, and you're good to go. And so from here, I can create a character. All these things you can see we have a bunch of characters saved. And from here, we're just going to enter the world. And so once again, just communicating with the dedicated server, getting all that information, and shooting back to me what I need to enter the world. And this is our first actual playable world. It's our first world you log into. Could be wherever the player logged out last. Could be the newbie zone, whatever you want to call it. And for us, it's like a little newbie area as we walk around. And so you can start playing the game. All this is now an Unreal Engine dedicated server in the cloud, and you're able to just play as you normally would in a multiplayer game. You can see my AIs are roaming around, doing whatever they want to do, and we're able to play. At some point, again, this is keep in mind, we're talking about an indie MMO framework here, and so in this indie MMO framework, there's going to be some form of, we're not doing a seamless loading world. So each world is going to be its own dedicated server. So there's going to be some form of player cap, but that some form of player cap is like undetermined, because that goes back to how does your game architecture work? How does it flow together? How is it optimized? A lot of people in the kind of Unreal Engine community say you can't do much more than about 100 people per Unreal dedicated server on Unreal Engine, but who knows? Yeah, so at some point, the Unreal Engine, a single Unreal Engine dedicated server will have too much of a player cap, because basically the more players there are, the more they have to replicate everything out to every player. And so that's why you have a lot of replication and aspects that you really need to. The number one replication optimization point is, or execute on server but simulate on the client. And basically you don't want to, pushing every little detail down through replicated variables, through just any type of RPC event, whatever. And so it's something that it's really highly reliant on your multiplayer code and how you do things. And so for Ruins of Tearyn and Vertical Third, that is a number one contention point, where it is going to be our number one thing of how do we improve our, because of bandwidth. And so it's going to be our number one contention point on improving and optimizing, because we want to hit potentially 200 to 400 people per zone. That would be like, our goal. If we hit that, wonderful. If we don't, it's okay. We'll deal with it, because we're indie MMO. We can't afford to go crazy like that. But it's one of those things that it's going to be the thing that we focus on from an optimization point, is cramming as many people as we can into a single Unreal Engine dedicated server. And so the other thing is the next aspect, which was a feature of this. So we have your first zone you load into, or first level. I say zone because I come from EverQuest, playing on EverQuest. But you have your first level you zone into, and then you have your other levels that there are their own instance servers that have their own player caps. They're not affected by each other, type of thing. And so in my demo, we'll just quickly do that. And right now I got my Mage Blink going like crazy. But the focus of this test was completing this kind of technical aspect of what we're doing, which is creating that zoning kind of infrastructure. And so this is kind of an old EverQuest thing where you would walk up to some sort of object, and you would it could be like an empty zone line. You just walk in and it would load you over to the next zone. But sometimes you had something to walk up to, you click on it, and it starts loading you in to the next world. And so we have our main world, and now we've zoned in. I've clicked, it's loaded me over, it's transferred me over to the first dungeon experience. There's no custom net code in this game, This is all out of box Unreal Engine, and it's all out of box blueprint code, actually. Everything we're doing in here is blueprint code. And so I'm a huge person for supporting blueprint code and like pushing how great it is. And so that's something I have until I need a dire reason to use C++, I'm staying with blueprint code. I have not had a reason to go to C++ yet. And so this is our first dungeon. We have our first dragon boss here. Unfortunately, he's broken, so he doesn't really work really well. It's also tuned to be more of like a 40 to 80% fight, but you know, those are some dev goals down the road, or playtest goals down the road. And so that's kind of the flow. You zone in. So if you go back here, you patch and launch your game from the Epic Game Store. You log in through the Ruins of Tearyn client, and then you get connected to the dedicated server on the character select, and then you get transferred to the dedicated server on the world or the zone. And again, if we go back to here, it's switched. Character select server is now, because no one was connected to it, it shut down itself, and now it's on standby. And the actual zone. So first, this was the open world zone. My names are terrible for this right now, but this is the open world zone, and then this was the dungeon zone. And so, if I go back here, again, these are the type of things that once they and you can see like the loading is very quick. And so I'll make a point about this in the future, but I have a little bit of a clunky transfer right now, which is something I'll be improving in the future. But the actual loading of everything was very, very quick. And so this will update soon as well, where this one will be online for a short period, and then this one will also pop up because this is the main world server. And so, and then from there, you can fill out, you can kind of guess the idea that multiple zones in the future. But we've got a question here from MMM. How much does this stack cost if we have X amount of players? So that's something that's up in the air. We're still learning that. So to run a single dedicated server in the cloud through PlayFab with your free hours you get, it's roughly like $60 to $100. But again, that's with very minimal players running around on it and stuff. And so it's something that I can't answer specifically. They have like a cost calculator themselves, but it's sort of hard to use and figure out. So, but that's the type of thing that we're very interested in sharing once we do get that data. And so stand by in the future for a more direct answer on that. And so this is a huge point. If you're trying to tackle an indie MMO, say goodbye to open world or seamless loading. Okay, that's just out the door. Once you start doing seamless loading in the massive open world, the engineering required to achieve that goes through the roof. And so I'm strongly telling you, do not even think about trying to do a seamless loading world as an indie MMO. It's again, so many complexities that come from it. It's just wildly different, or wildly more expensive, wildly more time-consuming, engineering costs, QA costs. It's just crazy how much that's going to add to your workload, and just don't do it. If you're building an indie MMO, do not do a seamless loading world. Just done. Until someone creates that tech and then gives it to you, don't even think about it. And so that's the next point is open world is just overrated. It's so overrated. There's tons of hitches from async loading and content. You have memory leaks. You have constant QA upkeep. Server to server complexity gets crazy. I love the talk that they did on Ashes of Creation on their mesh technology. It kind of gives you the idea of as soon as a player gets close to the end of one zone, then they have to then they basically copy that character on two different servers, and they're doing the same thing on both servers, and then eventually moves in more into the second server and like takes over and stuff. But like, talk about crazy complexity to do a seamlessly loading world. Just don't do it. Open world's overrated. Then you have these massive content goals to fill. because you always like build out this massive world, and then you're like, oh, we need content for this world, and there's like massive spaces that don't have anything, or maybe it's and then you have to put in more AI. That AI is going to take up more CPU costs and stuff that people may never see. So open world's overrated. And fast loading is good. Loading in itself is not bad. Fast loading is good. It clears your memory and a bunch of other stuff under the hood with Unreal Engine. But slow loading is bad. I always reference back to like playing Destiny, and it felt like 20 to 30% of your time was just loading into a zone. And so loading is not bad. Fast loading is good. Slow loading is bad. And, kind of like if you look here, again, my loading screen, I have a forced 10-second loading screen right now. And so, but you can see, I can even time it like 1, 2, 3, 4 seconds. Okay, 4 seconds I was loading to the other world. All right, and then everything else over here, that's a little bit of like setting up your character, making sure it's loading in properly. So I have a forced 10-second load right now. And so that's going to be much more improved in the future. And so, but yeah, like, that's why we're keeping zones a little bit smaller and that type of thing. And so your loading can be very, very fast. And then let me see if this updated over here. Yeah, so you can see here, both servers are now online. And again, once a server doesn't have any player, I have it coded into my server that once a server has no players, it'll like wait about a minute or so, and then it'll close itself down to reduce, CPU load and cost and stuff. And so, yeah, and from here, as you can imagine, this is where all those online services come into play. Like as we're playing, like you see, let me log out here. I'll quickly go over to. I'm going to log into a character that has a bunch of loot. Again, this was like very fast loading. I have a forced, like I think on the character select screen, 5-second load. But loading is extremely fast when you have these smaller zones. And I think it's Starkey. So you can see, basically, all my stuff has been saved in the cloud. I've got a bunch of things. If I drop them, they're not going to show up next time. My experience, my level saved, my character creation look is all saved in the cloud. And I can actually probably show that. Let me switch. I'm going to pull this over here. Just make sure I don't show something I'm not supposed to. But right now I'm doing, again, I'm keeping everything very primitive, very basic. I think I can show this. This is what my account looks like. We have all the characters I've created here. And then if we click into Starkey and we go to our title data in PlayFab is literally just a key value pair. It's JSON, things being sent up and down from the server. So I have very, very basic implementation and like keep it stupid simple implementation of doing this. And so what head did I choose? A value of it. It's just an index for a list and array on the server. And then we have their inventories, just choosing the data table that I've set up for that. And so it's loading those things in as you get into the game. And so if you drop a piece of loot, it's going to change the value to 0 or nothing. If you pick something else up, it's going to change the value to a reference to the data table index for that item. And then so you're saving your world location and your world location and rotation. So very, very keep it stupid simple way of doing cloud saving of data and everything like that. And that's like really what comes down to what we're trying to do with Tearyn is use existing technology, keep it stupid simple, don't overcomplicate it, and we'll actually be able to achieve this. And so that's what we're doing. And so in the grand scheme of things, as we build out more levels, like have a sand level, a rock level, a mountain level, multiple dungeons, they're all going to be isolated world levels. So if there's 500 people on one server, it's not going to impact any other server. They're each their own server. They have their own stress load, their own player caps. Maybe you have a smaller zone with less AI. Maybe you have a city zone that have like no AI. It's just NPCs. And so your player cap limit's going to be a lot more because there's not AI walking around doing things requiring updates. There's not, herbs and mines and ore and, lootables being replicated as you pick stuff up and do things. So it's going to change your player cap and stress loads based on those things. So that's something that always keeps in mind. It's like, again, I think WoW Classic is in the multiple MMOs do this to this day, where you have them instanced as well, and so maybe you reach your cap limit on 200 people for your city zone. Well, now there's going to be a city zone number 2, and so you're going to have multiple instances of each of those zones or whatever. And so then you give it to the players to be able to choose which one they want to go to. And so maybe their friends are in instance number 5 of your main city, so they all go there. And then you can end up doing dynamic stuff that maybe it's like it predicts which ones your friends are on and puts you there type thing, or whatever. But that's the general idea. You have multiple levels. They're all on their own isolated world and dedicated server. So if there's tons of people raiding that dungeon, that super popular dungeon, the people that are in the newbie zone, that's like outdated or old, aren't impacted at all. And from there, it's really easy to introduce any type of instance content. If you're trying to do an instance dungeon for Runes of Tearyn, we're starting with not instance dungeons, so everything's kind of there's one world. Everyone can kind of go to that place and experience that zone. Nothing's going to be specifically for only your group. And so we're not even touching PvP for who knows how long. That's a whole discussion, years away. So PvP is not on the discussion right now. But should we ever want to do a battleground or an instance dungeon, it's the same flow. It's just build a game as a dedicated server, launch it up in PlayFab, and then people can queue up for it and join it. They join that server, everyone joins that server, and they go and play the game, and then it ends and it closes itself out. So nothing complicated there. So transitioning into game mode-based content is really easy through this kind of thing. It doesn't require any other type of technology. And as a reminder, if you want to play Runes of Tearyn, we're doing a test. It started on Thursday, and it's running until tomorrow at midnight, basically. Join our Discord and just request a key. And I'll tell you, you have to send us your Epic Game ID, and we'll hook you up with the key. Again, we're doing playtests every quarter, so if you don't join this one, there'll be another one, sometime at the end of this year or early next year, depending on how things work out. And I think that's it for my talk on the indie MMO tech stack. And so if anyone has any questions, I can answer them, or I'm going to transition into a little bit of gameplay. Thank you very much for checking out my talk on indie MMO tech. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them below in the comment section or come to our Discord channel and start a discussion. If you ever want to join our playtest, just come into Discord at any time and request access to it. You will be given you need to send us your Epic Games account ID, and we'll give you a key to redeem on the Epic Games Store. You can do this anytime, and you'll be ready to go for the next online playtest. This is just a little bit of a time lapse of me playing the mage and solo and kiting different things, and I got a little bit of experience and a little bit of silk cloth loot as I ended up farming some spiders. On my TheMainStark YouTube channel, you can find the full video. This is an edited version that has a lot of things, little time spaces cut out to speed it up. Make sure to like and subscribe, and check back in as we will be continuing this talk of different technical and game design oriented topics on MMO design. Thank you once again, and see ya.